Good evening. My name is John H. and I am an alcoholic. Welcome to the Code Blue Big Book Action Seminar. What we're going to do in this seminar, guys, is we're going to go through the first 164 pages of our big book, our Guide to Freedom, and we're going to do exactly what it says. I myself am no big book guru. I'm no spiritual wonder man. I'm just a simple drunk who was almost dead from the disease when a couple recovered alcoholics took me through the book. I did the work, and it saved my life. Now, as a result of that, I try to pass on what has been so freely given to me. Now, I borrow heavily from the Joe and Charlie Big Book Weekend tapes. I borrow heavily from that smartass Clancy. I borrow from Chuck C. I borrow from all of the giants who have gone before me. So please, get yourself a big book, large print I prefer, a highlighter and a pen, and bring your willingness. Get ready to change your life. Thanks for listening. Good evening, everybody. I'm John. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, John.
During the 1950s, a man by the name of Max C., now dead, started a group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Golden Slippers. The group was a back to the basics of the big book kind of group, especially for those people who could not stay sober for any length of time. The group took a bunch of chronic slippers and walked them through the steps, taking the action exactly as laid out by the first 100 men and women who wrote the basic textbook Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in our basic textbook. One or more of the people who have done this work before will be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic textbook using a dictionary published at about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. We who have participated in these groups before have come to understand that these sessions make us much better sponsors. We can now lead people through the steps exactly as given to us by those who have gone before, unfettered and unchanged. In addition to being a boot camp for sponsors, we also feel this is especially valuable to those who have been through some sort of treatment or rehab and have been, in effect, left off at step 3 or 5. Recovery requires that we do all 12 steps. We recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we might not recover. These study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to the basic sessions, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. Okay, guys, so what we do is we open every session with the set-aside prayer. So you don't have to, but if you're inclined and you're willing, we take a knee and we say that top prayer right there. That's how we open up every session of the Code Blue. So, God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Amen. Okay, so we're going to start out with introductions. I do record this, but everybody's name gets deleted, so don't worry about that. During introductions, I'm going to pass around the 7th tradition. I'm John. I'm an alcoholic.
John.
All right, welcome everybody. Couple things. We'll do a little bit of housekeeping today, and we'll talk a little bit about the goals of what we do in Code Blue, and a little bit about the history of the book. I do have paperwork. You'll see paperwork, sometimes new paperwork every week. I've got a folder up there. You're welcome to grab a folder. You're welcome to grab the sheets of paper. Does everybody have a big book? I've got large print big books for $11 if you need to get one. Can't get those. And let's do this, everybody. I know, and the Code Blue works just as well as for people who have been sober 6 months, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, as it does for people who are struggling. I came in, let's get the stuff written down first. Everybody who's got their big book, okay, open up to this first page here. Open up to where it says Alcoholics Anonymous. And I want you to write your sober date at the top. Write your sober date at the top, and then put your name and your phone number. When I first went to my first Code Blue, when I wrote my sober date on there, I said, well, golly darn it, I don't want to write that down. What if I relapse? I've been relapsing my whole life. They said, write the date down, right? And I'll tell you what, many of the time when I was going through some hard times, I opened up the book and I saw that date there and I said, I am not changing that date again. I'm not changing it again. Too many times. And I want you to put your name and your phone number, because we only bring our books to AA meetings and AA clubs. And if you're going to write so much stuff in Code Blue and highlight stuff, that you're going to want your book if you happen to leave it behind. My sponsor was a big advocate. He said, John, you take your book, you go through this and you learn all this stuff and you write this stuff in there. You take your book to every meeting you go to, because what happens if you're sitting in a first step meeting with somebody and you know exactly in the big book where there's something that might help this person stay sober another day, and you don't have your book with you. So he's a big advocate that we take our books to the meetings in case we need to reference something and try to help other people. So we've got our sober date, we've got our name and our phone number, and then under that I want you to write alcoholism, triple underline the ism, and then write not alcoholism. Okay, many people, and I've been sober. As a matter of fact, I just got my 6-year chip maybe a week or so ago, and but I've seen a lot of people with substantial sobriety that I got this thing. I don't need to keep going to meetings. I don't need to keep helping people. I don't need to keep asking God for guidance. And I've seen these people go off the rails, and some of them have just burned their life to the ground without taking a drink. Right? They did this get to the old ways that they behave. Other people have relapsed and died, or ended up in jail, or killed themselves, or are back in treatment. So this is alcoholism, not alcoholism. And triple underline the ism and triple underline the wasm, because this is something that never leaves us. And I was told, that the spiritual awakening, if we do the work in this book, we're going to get a spiritual awakening, and what's going to happen is the obsession to drink will be removed, and we're going to learn how to be happily and usefully whole. But a fella taught me, he said there's 2 characteristics of a spiritual awakening that you had better be aware of. He said the first one you already know. You've got to be broken. I mean, you have got to have burned your life to the ground. You got to be broken in order to be willing to try something, something different. He said the other thing you got to know about a spiritual awakening is it's temporary. It does not last. If we don't keep doing the things that our book tells us to do, that wonderful experience that we received, even if we got all the promises, is going to go away. So he said the 2 things, John, you need to do is you need to align yourself with people that are trying to grow spiritually. We keep coming to meetings, and we keep learning. He said the other thing you need to do is keep helping other people, particularly alcoholics. So this is something, too, that he had me do underneath Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is, by the way, guys, the whole idea for Code Blue is we go through this session, we have the spiritual awakening, right? And then we go out and we share this with other people, right? Because then, if we don't give it away, we're not going to keep it. So the things that we're writing and the things we're doing now are what you're going to do with your sponsees when you're done with this program. So underneath Alcoholics Anonymous, let's write, are you willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol? And if it applies, you can write and drugs. I had to write over alcohol and drugs, and then I signed it and I put today's date there. Are you willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol? And if it applies, and drugs, and then sign it and date it. There were a lot of times when I came into these rooms and I first did this, I was sick and dying. I was thinking suicide was the best way out. And my sponsor said, okay, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. I don't want to do that. That's too strenuous. I don't think I need to do that. And he would page back to this. And I remember when I signed this thing, what kind of shape I was in. Are you willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol and drugs? And we sign it and we date it. And I don't ever ask anybody, whether they're one of my sponsees or anybody in these rooms, to do anything that I have not done myself. On the next page, okay, we're going to write the set-aside prayer. So right on the next page here, write set aside prayer and then just copy this down right here. That's how we open every session. And I got to tell you guys, I didn't like that prayer when I first looked at it. But as I've come to understand, all it's meant to do is to open up my mind to be more receptive to this information and to new things as I go along. When I came into these rooms, I knew everything. I knew everything. And that's why I couldn't get sober, because you guys couldn't teach me a damn thing, right? So God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Okay? So, and we're going to write that down. And again, that's how we open every session. And the one, a very important thing that you guys also have to know is if it is not in the big book, or if it's not in the 12 and 12 or some of our other literature, then it's my opinion, or it's the opinion of somebody that taught me that. So if it's not in the book, it's my opinion. And if it's my opinion, you can take it or you can leave it. Right? Now, in these rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I hear a lot of people that say, take what you want and leave the rest. Well, if they're talking about some of the instructions in the big book that we've got to do to save our lives, then I recommend that you take every one of them. Because the thing that you skip might be the one thing that saves your life or saves the life of your sponsee. But if it's not in the book and it's somebody's opinion, then that phrase applies, right? That you can leave it. Take what you want and leave the rest. Okay, so now we're going to go to the contents. And we're going to just write down what each a chapter is. So underneath contents, where it says preface, forward to the first, second, third, fourth edition, do a little bracket and write brief history. Okay? That's just the brief history of the book and the program. So preface, forward to the first, second, third, and fourth, bracket it, brief history. Doctor's opinion, brief history / step 1. Brief history / step 1. By the way, if anybody, if you miss a session or if I go too fast, because some of these sessions, there's so much information to cover that I start to speed up, you can always go onto YouTube. You can type in Code Blue Big Book, and you're going to see a couple big books show up. One of them is my thing that's fallen apart, and this one. This is an original replica. This is the first book to Alcoholics Anonymous. I can just see somebody trying to be anonymous carrying this down the street, right? Bill thought if you put bright colors in there and you made it really big, it would sell better. But you'll see a picture of a large print blue book in this one. You can click on it, and then you look for full session 1 or 2, and you can catch up on a session that you missed, or you can if you didn't get everything written, you can go back and you can fill in and highlight the stuff you missed because I went too fast. Let's see. Doctor's opinion, brief history, step 1. Bill's story is step 1. There is a solution. I'm going to put. I've changed that around so many times, but I'm going to put steps 1 and 2. There is a solution, steps 1 and 2. More about alcoholism 2. We agnostics 2. How it works 3 and 4. Into action 5 through 11. Working with others 12. And then we're gonna go to wives, the family afterward, to employers, and a vision for you. We're going to do another bracket. And we're going to write practicing these principles in all our affairs. Practicing these principles in all our affairs. And then on 11 there, you can draw a little arrow down. We're going to get a bonus on chapter 11, a vision for you. We're going to, in addition to practicing these principles in all our affairs, that one is building a fellowship up around you. Building a fellowship up around you. I mean, when I came into here, my circle of friends had depleted so greatly by the time I finally made it in here. Maybe some drug dealers and a couple of hardcore users, maybe some liquor store clerks, but that was about it. Just about every friend that I have today is a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. right? Now, I've also become friends with people that I worked with as a result of practicing these steps. People that I did not get along with, people that actually hated my guts, and I hated as a result of practicing these principles. I now count them among my friends as well. So, okay, so we are going to go to the preface, which is XI. Preface is XI. And at the top of the page, let's write, meetings are for fellowship. Meetings are for fellowship. Program is for recovery. Meetings are for fellowship. Program is for recovery. And sometimes it might seem like I'm not giving meetings enough credit, but meetings saved my life. The first 6 months that I came into these rooms this last time, I went to a meeting every night, and I was able to stay sober that way. I was going slowly insane because I was going to meetings only and I wasn't changing, and I was just about ready to relapse at 6 months sober when I went through Code Blue. So meetings are for fellowship, program is for recovery. This is the 4th edition of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. The first edition appeared in April 1939, and in the following 16 years, more than 300,000 copies went into circulation. The second edition, published in 1955, reached a total of more than 1,150,500 copies. The third edition, which came off press in 1976, achieved a circulation of approximately 19,550,000 in all formats. Because this book has become, highlight the next 4 words, the basic text for our. Okay, so highlight that, and off to the right, we're going to write textbook to be studied. This is a textbook to be studied. You know, I thought I could just read through this thing once and, maybe I'd get something, maybe I wouldn't. Every time I take a new sick and dying alcoholic through its pages, every time I go through them at Code Blue, I get something new and something different out of them. So it's a textbook to be studied. The basic text for our society. Circle that word society. And then off to the left, I want you to write, group can be a higher power. Anytime in the book Bill talks about a deity, he capitalizes it. And I want to say that the group can be a higher power for starters. Hopefully as we work through the steps, we'll actually develop our own higher power, something that is for ourselves and our own understanding alone. But for starters, group of drunks, right? God, or good orderly direction, or these meetings can be your higher power to help you stay sober one day at a time. The basic text for our society, and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. Okay, highlight the next 3 lines. Therefore, the first portion of this volume describing the AA recovery program has been left largely untouched in the course of revisions made for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th editions. So what they're telling us is that the first 164 pages have not been changed since this book came off the press, right? So, why would that be? We humans, and I think particularly alcoholics, I can do better, I can rewrite this thing, I've got better ideas, and things get changed and updated and moved around all the time. Why has the text stayed the same? Well, I think it stayed the same for 3 principal reasons. 4. I guess the main reason is it works, right? It works just as good today as it did back then. People tell me, they say, John, this book is out of date. It doesn't have any bearing on today's alcoholics, has no bearing on the problems that we meet with in today's world, and I think that it's all crazy. And to those people, I say nonsense. 3 reasons why. Number 1, alcoholics have not changed. Alcoholics have been the same ever since we first figured out how to make wine. I have no idea how many years ago that was. But we're still getting drunk. We're still crashing cars. We're killing people. We're getting divorced. We're getting fired. We're getting thrown in prison. We're committing suicide. We're miserable. We're desperate. We're afraid. We're angry. We keep relapsing and burning our life to the ground. The alcoholic has not changed, right? Secondly, alcohol hasn't changed, right? And ethyl alcohol, that's the same as it always was. The flavors have changed, the bottles have changed, the strengths, the packaging, the marketing, all of those things have changed, but alcohol itself and the effect that it has on us, that has not changed, right? Still the same as it was 3,000 years ago. And thirdly, guys, human nature never changes. Human nature is the same today as we were thousands of years ago, right? Aristotle, Caesar, Hammurabi, you go back as far as you want, human nature never changes. That is why the program and the book works just as well today as it did in 1939 when it came off the press, right? So don't let anybody tell you that this book is outdated. It's still saving the lives. It saved the life. The program in this book has saved the lives of more alcoholics than every other therapy the world has ever known combined. And it is still doing so today. The section called The Doctor's Opinion has been kept intact just as it was originally written. Highlight, in 1939 by the late Dr. William D. Silkworth. So next to where you underlined Dr. William D. Silkworth, you can write neurologist, treated over 50,000 alcoholics. So he wasn't an alcoholic, but he was a neurologist, and for some reason we alcoholics fascinated him. And for very little pay, after the stock market crash, he treated over 50,000 of us and came up with some ideas about the disease of alcoholism that were revolutionary at the time, and they've stood the test of time. Our society's great medical benefactor. The second edition added the appendices, the 12 traditions, and the directions for getting in touch with AA. But the chief change was in the section of personal stories, which was expanded to reflect the fellowship's growth. Bill's story, Dr. Bob's nightmare, and one other personal history from the first edition were retained intact. 3 were edited, and one of these was retitled. New versions of 2 stories were written with new titles. 30 completely new stories were added, and the story section was divided into 3 parts under the same headings that are used now. In the 3rd edition, Part 1, Pioneers of AA, was left unchanged. 9 of the stories in Part 2, They Stopped in Time, were carried out from the 2nd edition. 8 new stories were added. In Part 3, they lost nearly all. 8 stories were retained. 5 new ones were added. The 4th edition includes the 12 concepts for world service and revises the 3 sections of personal stories as follows. 1 new story has been added to Part 1, and 2 that originally appeared in Part 3 have been repositioned there. 6 stories have been deleted. 6 of the stories in Part 2 have been carried over. 11 new ones have been added, and 11 taken out. Part 3 now includes 12 new stories. 8 were removed in addition to the 2 that were transferred to Part 1. So let's, off to the left of all that stuff that I just read, let's write experience, strength, and hope. Okay, so that's a volume that has all 56 stories from the first 3 editions. It's called Experience, Strength, and Hope. And I bought that book about 4 years ago, and it's been gathering dust on my shelf ever since, but one of these days I'm going to read them. But that's got all the stories. And why did we do this? Well, we're going to highlight the next 5 lines. All changes made over the years in the Big Book, AA members' fond nickname for this volume, have had the same purpose: to represent the current membership of Alcoholics Anonymous more accurately, and thereby to reach more alcoholics. So they're changing these stories because, back in 1939, the vast majority of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous were middle-aged white guys. That's it. They might have come from different religions, but they were pretty much a homogenous bunch. We're going to see that there were 97 men and 3 women. But the age for coming in here has gone down. There's more women. There's many different religions, many different ethnicities. And they've got to change these stories so that people can relate. Because we come in here and we think we're unique. we think that nobody's like us, and that uniqueness is what kills many of us. So they change these stories around so people will be able to identify. Where we ended highlighting, where it says thereby to reach more alcoholics, off to the left, write primary purpose. Our primary purpose is to carry the message to the still suffering alcoholics. So that's what our primary purpose is in this fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. So right underneath this, we're going to write, you don't need to write it, but the program in a nutshell, I do want you to write 1, 2, 3. The program in a nutshell is number 1, trust God. Number 2, clean house. And number 3, help others. That's the program in the nutshell. Trust God, clean house, help others. And once again, I always am going to reiterate that if it is not written down in our literature anywhere, then it's my personal opinion or the opinion of somebody that taught me, and you can take it or leave it. If you have a drinking problem, we hope that you may pause in reading one of the 42 personal stories and think, yes, that happened to me. Or more important, yes, I felt like that. Or most important, yes, I believe this program can work for me too. That's why it is so important that the newcomer identifies with the problem that we all have. So before we start the foreword to the first edition, I'm just going to give you a little quick, brief history of me. I went to my first treatment at age 24, and it was whiskey and cocaine. And I had reached my bottom, and I remember calling into work. I was miserable, desperate, afraid. I was thinking, I can't stop. This is crazy. And I didn't know what to do. I called up and said, I'm going to treatment. And I did that when I was drunk and on coke. And then when I woke up the next morning, I said, oh my God, what have I done? Right? So I did go through treatment. I went through Hazleton in Center City at 24, and I got out of there, and they said, if you don't go to a halfway house, you are going to drink again. So I went to Fellowship Club. I lasted 2 days, and I got so pissed off, I said, you guys, you don't know nothing about me. I got to get back to work and make money. And I left that place, and I went straight to the bar and got drunk. Over the years, I would, when my life became so impossible that I had to escape, I would go to treatment. I went in my life, I believe I've been to 8, 9, maybe 10 treatments. And what I would do is I would escape my life, and I would go to a 21 or a 30-day treatment program, and I would get out of there, and then I would try to put my life back together. So I would go in there miserable, low, and desperate, but by the time I got out of there, my self-will would start to come back, and I would start to think, you know what, man? I think I'm better than these guys. I don't think I need this nonsense. And I would always get my job back. I'm a salesman. I could get a job anywhere because I was good at selling. And I felt that I was not a worthwhile human being if I didn't have money in my pocket. Said, I don't have time for this stuff. I got to go out there and make some money. And I would always relapse. And you know what? Funny enough, I relapsed once on gambling. I didn't drink, but I gambled for like a year and a half. That brought me to the brink of suicide. I relapsed on pills from the dentist. I took a couple of Vicodin from the dentist. I liked it so much, I went to the doctor. I fooled him into giving pills. 3 months later, I was popping over 100 Vicodin a day. Right? So we've got to be careful. I relapsed once on NyQuil. I wasn't feeling good, and I bought a thing on NyQuil. I liked it. I went back and bought 3 or 4 more. I drank it down, and then I went to the liquor store. So we've got to be careful. This last time, I was going to kill myself. It was 6 years ago. I was, I think, 48 years old maybe, and I thought that because I'd been through this, and I said, I have to kill myself. So for 2 years, I bought a lot of life insurance, and I stuck it out for 2 years because I wanted to make my suicide look like an accident. I had saved up about 1,000 Vicodin and 60 or 70 Ambien, and I was going to go up to the Boundary Waters. I was going to take them and go over in the canoe, and then some of my family members were going to get a lot of insurance money, or so I thought. I ended up on a 2-day blackout. Somehow I tried to go to work, and one of my customers drove me to the emergency room. I don't remember any of this. But I woke up in the emergency room, and I discovered that they had confiscated all of my pills, so I didn't have a suicide plan anymore. And I was freaking out. I went home, And I had enough squirreled about my apartment to last me various things for about a week. I didn't have a job. I was $100,000 in debt. And I was thinking, do I have the only thing I can do now is buy a rope, right, and go up to the top of the building and tie it to that ladder and run and jump. I called my sister up, and I told her what was going on, and she, of course, was horrified. And she said, get out your insurance card. You're still covered. It's only been 3 weeks since you left work. And I got into detox. I got into detox, and I went through, and I got out of detox, and I said, my God, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I've been here before. I went and I got my job back, and I said, I'm gonna treat mind, body, soul, everything. So my routine was I would get up at 5:30. I went to the gym. I went to work. I worked all day. After work, I went to a meeting. I did this 7 days a week. And the first 3 months were okay. By the 4th month, my emotions had started to build up, and instead of being grateful for having my job back, I was again saying, those sons of bitches are taking advantage of me. And all of a sudden, I started to get all my anger and my fear back, and I'm going to meeting after meeting after meeting. By the time I got to 5 months, I was crazy. By the time I got to 6 months, I was thinking about putting a bullet in my head. 6 months sober. I still had a 401k. I said, no, I'm going to cash that out, and I'm going to drink myself to death. Some fellas saw this, and they said, well, John, have you ever tried the program of Alcoholics Anonymous? And, you know, all these treatments and all these meetings. I said, what the devil is the program? I had no idea what it was. And they said, well, we're starting a Code Blue in 2 weeks. We're going to go through the book. We're going to do the work. And they guaranteed me that if I went through Code Blue and I did everything they said, they guaranteed me that my obsession to drink would be lifted. Not only that, they guaranteed me that my anger and hatred of everybody, including myself, and my fear would go away as well. And I said, my God, sign me up. When does it start? They said 2 weeks. I said, I don't know if I'm going to make it 2 weeks. And they said, okay, do you want to meet tomorrow and start going through the book? And I looked at them and I said, I'm not that desperate. You know, I'm crazy. Here I am. I'm ready to drink. And I said, no, I don't. But I stuck it out. And I got to tell you, I went through the Code Blue and I did everything. I showed up to every session. I did every little thing that they asked me to do, because I was going to prove them wrong. I was going to be the guy that said, you see, I did everything and it didn't work, right? That's the kind of guy I was. And somewhere through the middle of Code Blue, my obsession to drink was lifted out of me. And somewhere after, you know, my 4th and 5th step, all this anger and hatred and fear started to dissipate. And I couldn't believe it, man. All the things that made me want to drink started to dissipate out of my life. So they were doing another Code Blue right after that, and I'd never felt like this in my life. I said, I'm doing it again. I did another Code Blue. Right after that, I did a 3rd one, because again, I'd never had fellowship. I'd never had feelings like this. And by the 4th one, they had me start to read and greet and do this and that. By the 5th one, everybody bailed on me, so I finished the Code Blue myself, and I've been doing them ever since. I think this is maybe my 14th, either 14th, 15th, or 16th one. And I just love doing it, because when I go through these pages, I get to rework these steps myself too, and I get to grow, and I get to help others, things keep getting better and better as long as I follow the instructions in this book on a daily basis. So, again, the whole idea of this is that we're going to go through this. We're going to lose our obsession to drink. We're going to learn how to be happily and usefully whole, and then we're going to go out and we're going to help other people. So forward to the first edition. This is the foreword as it appeared in the first printing of the first edition in 1939. We, so I want you to circle that we. When I came into these rooms, it was me, myself, and I. So we're not alone anymore. We can do what I can't do, right? We together can do what I can't do. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women. Off to the right, we're going to write 97 men, 3 women, 60 Akron, 40 NYC. 40 NYC. So, again, guys, I used every day of my life except when I was going to meetings for 35 years. And if it can work for me, it can work for you too. 100 men, highlight to the end of to where you see book, purpose of this book, who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. So I want you to highlight till there, and then I want you to circle the word precisely and circle the word recovered. And then off to the left where it says recovered, you can write never cured. Never cured. And 2 pages forward, I'm going to talk about that word recovered a little bit. For them, but we're never cured. What we can do is we can get rid of the obsession, because from time to time our brain gives us an idea that overcomes all other ideas to the contrary and fools us into taking a drink. We can get rid of that obsession, or we can, with God's help, that obsession will go away. We always have the allergy. The allergy, guys, is once we take a drink, we cannot control how much we take, right? If we were to take a drink tonight, we'd all have that allergy, but we can get rid of the obsession. And that's the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication, authentication, that means valid proof. Now, we've got this little, when I said at the beginning, I say we have a dictionary, that's this right here. What it is, it's 3 pages of words that they feel that the meanings have changed enough where they're going to give us the definitions of what they think that Bill meant when he put it down in the book there. So these little 3 pages is the dictionary that I refer to at the beginning of every session. No further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend, highlight to the end of the paragraph, that the alcoholic is a very sick person, and besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. So right here it's saying that the alcoholic is a sick person. Most of us alcoholics, for our whole lives, what have we heard? You have weak willpower. You have low moral character. You're sinful. Why can't you pull yourself together, damn it? Why can't you do it? Right? Well, here we're finding out for the first time that we're sick. We're not bad people. We're not weak-willed. We're sick, right? This is the first time in history that this idea that we have an illness has come out. Prior to 1939, we were just plain old, lousy, rotten, weak-willed, low moral character, sinful people, right? That's all we were. It is important that we remain anonymous because we are too few at present to handle the overwhelming number of personal appeals which may result from this publication. Being mostly business or professional folk, we could not well carry on our occupations in such an event. We would like it understood, highlight that our alcoholic work is an avocation. So avocation, after that you can write volunteering/free time. Volunteering/free time. We don't get paid for it. We do it from a sense of duty for those that helped us. We do it because it keeps us sober. We do it because it makes us feel better. We do it because it's the right thing to do. When writing or speaking publicly about alcoholism, we urge each of our fellowship, highlight, to omit his personal name, just that little bit there, designating himself instead as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. So after that, after Alcoholics Anonymous, write no last name outside of club. No last name outside of club. Now, if I'm at an AA meeting, or I'm a member of this club, believe you me, I want everybody to know that my name is John Henry and I want them to have my number, because if they're having an issue or they feel like taking a drink, I want them to be able to get a hold of me. And pretty much my company, a foolish company that I work for, they put me through so many treatments because I'm a good salesman. Everybody there knows that I'm an alcoholic, and everybody knows there that I no longer drink. And most people know that if they have a family member that needs help, they can send them to me. But when this was written, they would have got just deluged with too many people. So no last name outside a club, but we want alcoholics to be able to get a hold of us, right? We don't want, hey, my name is Janet from another planet. How can I get a hold of her, right? No, we want to know what our real name and our phone number is. Very earnestly, we ask the press also to observe this request, for otherwise we shall be greatly handicapped. We are not in an organization in the conventional sense of the word. There are no fees or dues whatsoever. Right next to that, put 7. That's tradition 7. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. Circle the word honest and write 3. That's tradition 3. Now, they took that word honest. When you look at the wall, you're not going to see that in the step, or you're not going to see it in the traditions now, because they said, well, how, maybe I don't even know if I honestly want to stop. So the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. They took that word out. We are not allied with any particular faith, sect, or denomination. Put 10. That's tradition 10. Nor do we oppose anyone. We simply wish to be helpful to those who are afflicted. Highlight the next 3 lines. We shall be interested to hear from those who are getting results from this book, particularly from those who have commenced work with other alcoholics. So early on, they knew the importance of helping other people. We should like to be helpful to such cases. Inquiry by scientific, medical, and religious societies will be welcome. So underneath that, let's write, must work with others. My first couple of sponsors I had were big advocates. They said, you've got to work with other people. As a matter of fact, when I wasn't even, I was going through Code Blue, and I only been doing it for 3 months, working the steps for 3 months. I had made 2 amends, and my sponsor said, John, the next time at meetings when they say who's willing to sponsor, I want you to raise your hand. And I looked at him and I said, you've got to be kidding me. He said, just do it. So I did it, and the very first time I did it, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and he said, can you help me? Now, of course, I became completely full of fear, and I got really angry at my sponsor, and I called him on the phone and I said, you son of a bitch, I'm going to kill this guy, right? I said, you're taking him. And he laughed and he said, no, you know what, you're not going to kill him. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. He said, of course you know what to do. You're going to take him through the book. You're going to have him write what we wrote. You're going to have him highlight what we highlighted. You're going to have him do step 4 just like I had you do it. Then you're going to listen to his step 5. Then you're going to take 6 and 7, and then you're going to help him start to make amends. And I said, really? That's it? And he said, that's it. So funny enough, this very first guy, we started meeting the very next day, and he was just very willing. And today he's a good friend of mine, and he's still sober. So, I mean, this thing really does work. And very, I find that I might be a conduit. I can share the information. But if the person is willing, if they're ready, I think it's going to work. If they're willing to do the work, I know it'll work. Everybody that I've sponsored one-on-one that has done every little bit of work that I've asked them to do is sober today, 100% of them. Now, the ones that were not willing to do all of the work, I'm not going to do that amend, I am not going to go to that woman, those people, I don't know. I've lost contact with them. People who have gone through Code Blue, to the best of my knowledge, people who have hit every session and who have done all of the work, which, I don't want to discount anybody in this room, but, that might be, 20 or 30% of the people that go through a Code Blue, to the best of my knowledge, those people are sober as well. So this thing really does work. It works if you do it. It's this simple. If you do everything the book tells you to do in the first 164 pages, you're going to get better. If you don't, you won't. At least that's been my experience in these last 6 years. Forward to the second edition. Figures given in this foreword describe the fellowship as it was in 1955. Since the original foreword to this book was written in 1939, a wholesale miracle has taken place. Our earliest printing voiced the hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. Already, continues the early text, 2s and 3s and 5s of us have sprung up in other communities. 16 years have elapsed between our first printing of this book and the presentation in 1955 of our second edition. In that brief space, Alcoholics Anonymous has mushroomed into nearly 6,000 groups whose membership is far above 150,000 recovered alcoholics. Circle that word recovered. Okay, draw a little arrow over to the side and write, they have done the work. They have done the work. And then above that, I want you to write difference between cured and recovered, because there is a difference. So they have done the work. I in these rooms, and I don't want to be an ageist or anything, but it's always an old duffer. I'll get this old duffer, he hasn't had a drink in 30 years, and he says, John, you can't recover from this disease. You can never recover it. And I look at the fella and I say, when I walked into these rooms, I was miserable. I was desperate. I was full of fear. I was full of anger. I wanted to kill myself. I hated everybody, including myself, and I couldn't stop using. And I look at him and I say, you're damn right I've recovered from that situation. I am no longer anything like that. So indeed, I can recover. And then I say, I think what you mean is that I'm never cured, right? Because we're gonna discover that there are things we've got to do on a daily basis to stay recovered, right? I mean, I think it's kind of like, maybe diabetes, I guess I could say. There are things we've got to do on a daily basis to stay healthy, right? But as long as we do them, we're going to have a great life. We're going to have a great life. Groups are to be found in each of the United States and all of the provinces of Canada. AA has flourishing communities in the British Isles, the Scandinavian countries, South Africa, South America, Mexico, Alaska, Australia, and Hawaii. All told, promising beginnings have been made in some foreign countries and U.S. possessions. Some are just now taking shape in Asia. Many of our friends encourage us by saying that this is but a beginning, only the augury of a much larger future ahead. So augury, omen, foretelling, prediction.